Grab yourself a cozy drink, maybe even a glass of wine, and join us here at the soon to be named book club. Hi, everyone. I am Ian, your hostess with the mostest, with my lovely glass of wine today. As always, we have we have Decal, we have Book Club Mom, and we have Heart Illustrations, but you can call her Soap. All right, there we go. So just to catch us up a little bit, we are the past, what has it been? 2 sections, 3 sections we've read? 2 sections. Past 2 sections we've read, we've met our lovely main 3 characters of Caroline, who's in present day, and then Nella and Eliza, who was in 17, oh, I just read it too, 1791.
1791.
Yeah, 1791. Yes, we are reading The Lost Apothecary. Not bad. um, we've learned about Caroline's lovely husband James, along with herself, realizing half of the story or part of the story with her adventures in London so far. We've adventured with Nella on her background and knowing that she runs an apothecary that deals out poisons, which we found out didn't always do that. So we've been learning that storyline there. And then little Eliza, who's been really wanting to get with Nella in every situation, which we get a glimpse into in this section of ours. Anything I missed that's worth noting?
I think that's a pretty good recap.
All right, so in a sentence or less, what did we think about this section we read? So we ended up reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters. So not a super long section, but or super long with chapters, I should say.
I'm going to say intriguing, enticing, and anxiety-inducing.
I'd say it's this part is all about trust and betrayal.
I was going to say suspense, mysterious, and exciting.
Men are trash.
That too. Yeah, that too.
That's what
In case you were wondering, I don't like James any more than I did before. In fact, I like him less.
I'm going to ask a question later about Frederick and James, so you can decide. You can think about which one you like more on that one. So we start off in our chapter 15. So we start off present day with Caroline. We start off with Nella. I'm sorry, I did not write the name in that one. We start off with Nella. Same day as we read last time, with the leaving of Lady Clarence and threatening to basically Lady Clarence blackmailing her. So she gets another potion.
We started off with Eliza.
Did we?
Yeah, chapter 15, right?
Yes.
I'm so
sorry.
Yeah, it's Eliza.
We talk about like Nella like 90% of the time, so the confusion, I got confused.
Yeah. I usually write the
because we didn't actually get Nella's point of view at all.
We did
throughout
not.
These chapters, which I was pretty surprised about. But I mean, everything was like Decal said, all about Nella when we were with Eliza. So
yeah, no. Usually I write the little name. I did not this time for some reason. So anyway, so we get Eliza's point of view for this whole section with Nella's dilemmas and Nella's stories even. Yes, it works. Okay.
Well, the gist of this chapter seems to be that Nella doesn't want to hurt women with her poisons. And the fact that she preserves their stories, their memories, their worth, right? That's why she writes everything down, even if it's a simple, Jane Doe, this date, and who the person was involved in delivering the poison, right? And so it's very interesting to see, how Nella tracks this and why it's so important to her. So in a sense, Nella is really, despite the fact that she's doing something that is pure evil, poisoning people, I think when all is said and done, she feels like she's doing a service to womankind by getting rid of these men who are no good. So, and she's preserving that and their stories in her ledger.
Mm-hmm.
When you said that, it just made me kind of laugh because I just remember in the beginning of the book when they said, like, these guys would propose to these girls on the bridges and then they'd throw the ring if they didn't like it. And then the ones that are getting married are trying to kill their husbands. So.
That's actually a really good point.
Very interesting.
So, moral of the story, don't get married. Don't be in a long-term relationship.
Yeah, that's all I got in this book as well. So
Make sure someone proposes.
You'll either be throwing the ring off the bridge or you'll be killing your husband later.
Right. Make sure you get proposed to by like a cliff or a bridge where you can throw the ring if you need to.
exactly.
Or the guy, for that matter. Kidding.
Yeah.
We do not support murder.
So we start off with Eliza's point of view of Nella just really like hemming and hawing about what to do. And, Eliza does point out, she's like, well, you've got everyone in that ledger. Like, what do you think is going to happen if you just leave? like, like it's not just you, it's all of us. And she was like, oh, that is a good point. So yeah, I did really like the little blurb though of why Nella keeps track or has her ledger of all the women. Like I really appreciated this may be the only place that their names are recorded, only place that they will be remembered. And I was like, that's so true for common folk with history and other people's point of views. Like textbooks are one thing, it's first person point of views is another for history. So I really liked that. I was like, oh, that is so true.
I liked it too.
I just think it's crazy that back then, like, so many people went unnoticed in the world, whereas today there's everything tracking you and like the amount of things you have to sign and like for work, etc. Like it just like they can't forget you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back
You're
then, it was
everywhere.
just, yeah.
Everybody's so traceable now. So it's like,
Yep.
yeah, that is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, but even so, like most likely, most if not all of this like internet stuff will be forgotten. Like 99% of it isn't going to go into like history books or be talked about. Like you're still going to get kind of the same concept. You're just going to have that footprint where like it's easier to get those other points of views and stuff like that.
No, but I think we're leaving digital footprints everywhere, so it will be preserved in one way or another. Maybe not. They won't think, okay, book club mom, not very interesting. We'll just, put her over in that lame section over there. But other people who are more celebrity, notorious, those sorts of things, they'll get their much bigger space in the storage closet or in the digital cloud.
On the server.
Giant server, wherever that'll be. But there certainly will be some kind of digital footprint of all of us.
Yeah. The internet is forever.
Oh yeah.
Well, of course, until we don't exist anymore. That's a whole other book.
It was funny. I was listening to a random podcast and they were talking about the digital footprint, and they were like, and they're like, someone I think in their chat where they originally were doing the podcast made a comment of, "Oh, not having a digital footprint is sexy," and both of the people in the podcast were like, "That's kind of like scary, like if they don't have a digital footprint."
Like serial killer.
Right, that's exactly what they said. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, that's so true though. I'm like, if I can't at least find you on one thing, that's a problem.
Yeah. Red flag.
Red flag, for sure. Just ending that little conversation though with Nella and Eliza before they go on their adventure. I did like Nella's little blurb about the Indian hemp and I'm blanking on her name, the Mistress
Mrs.
Amwell.
Amwell, thank you, yeah. And how basically if the Indian hemp worked for Amwell, then Eliza wouldn't be there essentially. And I was like, oh. So I thought that was a cute little like this was fate moment.
Well, and I also liked that because it was really kind of drove the point home that the meeting was fate, because Mrs. Amwell had gone to Nella prior to wanting to send Eliza there to kill her husband. So I thought that was pretty cool too.
Mm-hmm. So then through the rest of the chapter, we get their little adventure, or at least
Beetle Gap.
Yes, they get their little adventure the rest of the chapter with catching the beetles, which I thought it was cute that it is. I think the beetle is on the front cover. That's what that little green bug is.
Wait,
I didn't
no
realize
way.
that at the beginning, but I thought that was cute.
That is so cute.
So I just so I thought the funniest line in that whole thing though was Nella just looking at Eliza and going like, "You would kill a man, but you don't want to go pick 100 beetles." And I too would rather kill someone than pick 100 beetles in the middle of the night. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, I was like, the minute she's like, I think I felt legs, another pair of legs down next to the beat, so we can go right here. I'm like, no, I do not want to feel any legs. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and then they basically go into the shed after they're done picking all the beetles, the 100 beetles that they needed. And then that's where we find out more of Nella's backstory, and mainly with Frederick. What did we all think of that? Who do we like more, James or Frederick?
Neither.
Neither, right?
They both.
Thumbs down, both of them.
If I had more thumbs, it'd be more thumbs down for both.
They're just like on like complete opposite ends of the spectrum with that though, because one of them is the married one getting cheated on, and the other one is the mistress, right? So it's two very, isn't she?
Yeah, Nella would be the mistress.
Yeah, because Nella was the mistress, and then
Caroline.
Caroline is.
Excuse me. Nella did not knowingly go into that relationship believing she was the mistress. She would never have done that.
Yeah.
She, came into her shop claiming Risa was his sister. And only after only after she's basically miscarried her child, Risa comes into the apothecary and tells her the truth. So again, Nella didn't knowingly know. It's just one of those awful things, that she realized afterwards.
Well, and then the fact that we basically learned that not only did Frederick go to Nella's shop, like saying that Risa was his sister and saying that, he needed something to cure, the fact that she hadn't bled or whatever. And it's like, so she was obviously pregnant. His wife was obviously pregnant. She went to the shop. And so then Frederick gets this thing that's supposed to help. And then it obviously doesn't help. Like, Risa obviously miscarries also. And then he does the exact same thing to Nella. Like, once wasn't enough. Once wasn't enough for you. Like, you really, man? Come on. Yeah.
I definitely didn't expect, like, reading about Frederick, that it was going to be someone else who killed Frederick. I definitely thought it was going to be Nella, and then that would start the whole thing. I thought it was very interesting that it still ended up being someone else technically that she was helping.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's how the whole apothecary started, because Risa had killed Frederick, and then word spread.
Well, the poison,
underground.
the only poison, like poison aspect of the apothecary, yeah.
Yeah. And then that's how it started. Like, that's how the poison started.
Yeah, there was a lot of good quotes, honestly, in that chapter. Just in that little whole story, though, I really liked the little, like, vengeance is its own medicine. But it was very depressing at the end of that chapter, where Nella was just kind of like, there's there's nothing that will fix the pain that I have, and it's been 20 years basically. I'm just like, oof.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's got to be pretty terrible to not only find out that the man that you were seeing and you were in a relationship with purposely gave you poison so that you would miscarry, and then you find out 2 weeks later that that same man that was supposedly only devoted to you has a wife, and you're not the first one of his mistresses. Like, and all of that happened like within 6 months of her mom dying, and she was only like in her early 20s, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's awful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other quotes I liked in that, though, was right before we got into the whole story, Eliza was talking to Nella about, like, well, Nella made the comment about how, like, her mom knew all of the poison, she just never used her knowledge as a weapon. And then there was that whole conversation with Eliza about, like, why she's actually doing this, and basically it's betrayal. Like, she's not gonna let men get away with the crap that they pull, like mainly. So I thought that was, I liked that little insight into Nella, where we get not only finally the story of what happened with Frederick, because they were definitely not giving us all the info, but also just why she does what she does, which I mean, probably in the same situation and I had the knowledge too, I probably would do, like. But I do like overall just the, like, just generically, not just specifically for that chapter, I do like the whole, like everything comes from the earth, and, like, you can find things there that will help. Like, I know that's not, like, the driven point of, like, replace that with drugs, but I still like how they're giving, like, us a little insight into all the different uses for just plants.
Yeah.
And then from there, so there we move on to Caroline, or Carolyn, I never know which one it is. So so we left off with her right before, like, James is about to land in London. and be at the hotel. And, she's walking back to the hotel when we left her. So now we get her little like anticipation. And then I was surprised how we just like jumped into it basically. Like it was like one page of like anxiety and then it's like James is there and I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Well, and I feel like that was almost intentional of the writer because I feel like it kind of put us more in Caroline's shoes because Caroline also did not have that much notice that James was going to be there. So it was like, "Oh crap. He's coming. I don't want him to be here. I don't like this." And then all of a sudden, he's here.
Yeah. Their first encounter since the whole thing basically went as how I expected. I'm very happy that Caroline stood her ground with a lot of things. I am
Yeah.
surprised they went to lunch though. Like I think the author just did it to keep the story moving. But I am very surprised that she's like, "Yeah, you can come to lunch." I'm like, "No." Like I'm gonna
No.
go eat food.
I'm surprised she's even letting him stay in the hotel room. No. If you were gonna waste your money on a $3,000 plane ticket to come somewhere you weren't even invited and not wanted, you can go ahead and splurge the extra money to get yourself your own little hotel room because I don't want to see you. I want nothing to do with you. Leave, please. I think she was too nice to him.
Fair enough,
sure.
but I mean, there is that whole situation where, like, I think in the back of your mind, you're still like, you just spent our money. Like, what are you doing? Like, they have been married for what, 10 years? This is their 10-year anniversary. Like, those are joint bank accounts and things like that.
Yeah, I'd have been pissed. I'd have been like, no, if you could spend $3,000 to fly out here unwanted, you can spend $3,000 to fly home. Bye. I don't care if it's my money. I wanted space and you didn't respect that. That alone is reason enough to dislike James. Like when someone asks for something or like needs space, to just blatantly not respect that is just so not cool. Like he could have asked. He could have called the hotel. He could have called her room.
Yeah, I don't appreciate anything that James did. I'm like, you messed up. Like you needed to give space. And like that's kind of like the only like space and like the unknown suck sometimes. But like, well, how is being there gonna help anything?
Well,
Like you're basically just trying to control the situation more than you already have.
oh my gosh. And I mean, while we're on the subject, like when they start talking,
Yeah, we can just jump right into that whole lunch.
When they start talking and they're at this lunch and like he's like trying to blame her for it. He's like, I was kind of unhappy. Like our life was so safe and predictable. He even said my life was so safe and predictable. And she was like, no, it's our life. And then he was like, but I know that you want safe and you want predictable. And she's like, no, I didn't want any of that. Like, I gave up Cambridge for you. And then I got so pissed because he was like, well, I didn't rip up the application. Well, yeah, you didn't rip up the application, but you certainly were controlling her narrative enough to where she felt like she didn't have the choice, enough to where she felt like she couldn't go to Cambridge and like successfully sustain a long distance relationship with you. Like it could have worked. It's worked for countless people to do long distance and it would have just been a grad program. It would have just been a few years. It could have worked, but he didn't want that. So he like even him saying like, I didn't rip it up. Like I wasn't the one to actually do it. Like just because you weren't the one to actually do that and to actually like just because she was the one that ripped up her application doesn't mean that you didn't have anything to do with it. Like you definitely still did. And he's like she even said like he's just not taking responsibility for anything. Like he wants to diffuse the blame for the situation when the blame is really all his, no matter how unhappy he was.
Exactly. Like he didn't physically rip up the application, but he mentally did it so that she would do it. So it's kind of like you played 99% percent of it, but she did the 1% that makes it real, right? So
yeah,
like
mean, my whole thing was, how do you spend $3,000 on a plane ticket and just come, and that's your first conversation? Like, what? What?
And exactly. Even after all of that, he was like, well, shouldn't, like, now that I'm here, like, shouldn't we just talk about all of these questions, like, right now together? And she's like, absolutely not. I didn't even want that. I came to London to get away from you. And God, the way that he was like, oh, well, I was just beside myself, my wife alone in a foreign country for the first time ever on her own. It's like, you weren't beside yourself. You were just mad because you couldn't control her. Like, I would have taken any utensil on that table and stabbed him with it if I was at that lunch.
Yeah, I think that just showed James's true personality, whatever, at that point. That was just
because
bad.
he made it all about himself, like the entire conversation too, because he was like, oh, well, it's done. It's like human resources. They've transferred her. We're in different departments. And Caroline was like, I would be more concerned, like, you're the higher up person who coerced, I'm sure, the woman that you were sleeping with into sleeping with you. Like, yeah, he just not, I mean, there are very few ways he could have been written as a character to redeem himself from cheating on Caroline. There are very, very few ways that he could have been written to redeem himself. And none of those happened.
But I was also happy to see that Caroline does realize that part of the problem is with her. I mean, and at the last paragraph on page 151, she says, if I was honest with myself, I wondered if looking forward to a baby had been a subconscious way of disguising the truth, that not everything in my life was how I imagined it would be, and that I hadn't lived up to my own personal potential. And worst of all, I'd been too scared to even try. So I think that she's realizing herself that, that a lot of this is on her because she was sort of taking the easy way James was offering instead of saying, you know what? No, I still want to do this Cambridge thing and I'm going to take advantage of it. And if you still love me, maybe you'll be there when I'm done. But if you don't, so be it, so.
Yeah, I think that is important to mention. As much as I hate James, I mean, we definitely do see that Caroline played a part in it too. And I mean, that's just ultimately true of everything. Like, every relationship has two people. So, I mean, each person bears fault to an extent. So I think that is important to mention. As much as I love to bash James, Caroline does hold some of that responsibility as well. But I also feel like she's doing something about it too.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
for sure.
Like, trying to be better, at least now, since finding out about the cheating. And it just feels like James isn't ready to take responsibility for his cheating or the relationship.
Do we think that, so from what we've read, do we think that, so far, do we think that Caroline will take James back?
No.
I don't think so, but she also still hasn't taken that pregnancy test either, I think. So,
Yeah.
I think she's just realizing how tempting it is to be her own person, right? And she's finding all this excitement being where she really wanted to be in the first place, in England, and exploring history. And now she's possibly on the cusp of discovering something very amazing. And so I think at this moment, it's too bad James did show up, because I think she's really wanting to concentrate on what's happening with this this vial that she found.
Right. And then, of course, during the lunch, we get the little text from Gaynor about the manuscripts that are coming in from the time that we're reading with our other storyline with Nella and Eliza.
Yep.
So obviously someone finds Nella's logbook. I mean, that's what it sounded like to me, right? Because she says they're bulletins, a periodical dated from 1791. So that's when Nella was working. They're not digitized. And one includes an image. So I don't know about the one with the image, but I'm assuming that one of them is Nella's ledger. But I don't know. That's just how I read that.
That's a good guess. I'm not really sure what is going to pop up with those manuscripts that she ordered, but I'm glad we'll get to find out in a day or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then after James and Caroline's lovely thing, we jump back into our Nella and Eliza storyline. And so then that's the next morning, basically. We start off with Eliza just being super anxious about being caught, which I think we all would. Like, who wants to carry around a bag of bugs? Like she said, that's really hard to explain.
She didn't even have an explanation for it. I don't even know what you would say. Like, oh, I'm grabbing bugs for my pet lizard. Like, I don't. Did they have pet lizards back then? Like, I don't think so.
I did like that little the little thing where Nella was eating so much that she got like indigestion, and she's like, or Eliza was eating so much, sorry, and then
Yeah.
And then she's like, did Nella poison me? I'm like, really? I'm like, after all that.
And I think that just reminds us how young Eliza is.
Yeah.
You know, to be involved in all of this, to be the one who like originally went to the apothecary to get, you know, the poison to kill Mr. Amwell. Like, I think that just kind of reminds us how young that she is and how she just doesn't still quite understand everything.
I mean, just go from the understanding point again. Again, we get the whole like almost period talk, and then Eliza's still sitting there like, what does she mean? I'm like, ask questions.
You weren't afraid to ask about her past and Frederick and her mom and how she ended up selling poisons.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I feel like Nella obviously cares for Eliza in some way based on how things were when the two like parted each other, but like, just ask her. It's normal. She would have told you that more than what Mrs. Amwell told you, which I feel like any 12-year-old would be confused about. So.
So then we get this whole like we get the interaction with Nella and Lady Candace, yes, and Clarence. And then like you get this whole feeling that Nella's just she's like, this, I have a bad feeling about all of this. She's like, I don't like this. Like, it's not just the like she's killing a woman thing. It's more than that. Do we think that's foreshadowing? And if it is the ledgers as a manuscript, do we think like we're gonna find out what the foreshadowing is in present day more like also instead of just, you know, with her storyline? Does that make sense? Was it too long?
Sorry, did you have I blanked for a second. Was that a question?
I think it was.
Okay. Can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm like looking at three different things.
So you're
I'm trying to get it. I just need to hear it one more time.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
he's wondering if the ledger is going to play a role in the police or anyone discovering Nella, what she's done, her whereabouts, all that. Basically, right, Ian?
yeah, like are we gonna see like is the manuscripts like the foreshadowing before we get the storyline in the past? Like will that be something or like is it just gonna all play out the way it's gonna play out? Like are we gonna learn something new with the manuscripts before we get like what happens to Nella?
See, I feel like we might just to see like here's so many people from that era that nobody knows about, and now she's giving a name to, but we'll never figure out who Nella is.
Mm.
Right. And the strange part is all these women know who Nella is, but nobody else does. You know what I mean? That they know how to get in touch with her. They know that she makes poison. But so even if somebody found the ledger and there was no attachment, let's say Nella wasn't there, right? Then how would they ever connect Nella? You know what I'm saying? Except, of course, if one of the women stepped forward, but that would take somebody also incriminating themselves, and I doubt very much that would happen. So,
Like, I wonder if, like, you know how Gaynor said one of the bulletins that they found had an image in it? I wonder if it's like some type of news clipping or something.
mm-hmm.
And it's like something happened at the party where Lady Clarence poisoned her husband's mistress. So I'm wondering if that's what the one with the image is, and then that's what sort of leads Caroline and Gaynor into like discovering that more was going on with Nella's apothecary, but I don't really know. And maybe that leads to discovering the ledger, or maybe the ledger like just isn't even part of the documents that they found. But yeah, I also don't think that anyone would implicate themselves just to give up Nella.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Unless Lady Clarence holds a grudge.
Plot twist, Lady Clarence dies. That would be karma at its best. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I definitely think something big is going to happen, though.
Yeah, the way Nella is like kind of freaking out. Like I think you can tell something big is coming, especially since we're already more than halfway through this book. We're gonna get some big events coming up.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also wondering, I don't know if you want to jump to this yet, Ian, but we follow Eliza to the bookshop and she meets, what's his name, Tom, right?
Tom Pepper, yep.
She meets Tom. And so I'm kind of wondering if Eliza's like going to make herself a nice little friend and then just keep going back to seeing Tom, and if she's going to let some things slip to Tom accidentally, because we've already been given like enough indications that Eliza is still a child. So I'm kind of wondering if Eliza's budding relationship with Tom could lead to some problems for her and Nella.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that. Before we get to Tom, though, like remember we had at the end of that chapter, we had that like sorrowful goodbye between Nella and Eliza. Do we think that's it? Do we think Eliza will come back?
I think they're going to find each other again.
Yeah.
Somehow they're gonna the story between the two of them is not over. So
they're going to need each other again somehow, I think, because I think with that goodbye, it's really clear just how much they both care for each other. Like Nella, in a way, is sort of this person that Eliza can use to escape with, and is very much kind of like a mentor-apprentice relationship. And then Nella also, I think Nella just needs the company. Like, it's really sad that Nella feels like she can't let Eliza in because she doesn't want, like, whatever, all of her bad fortune to spill over into Eliza's life and set Eliza down the same path. So I think that's really kind of sweet and kind of sad. But I definitely think they're going to end up needing each other again for something.
I think so.
Yeah, there's no way it's it for them. It can't be. That would be so weird.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we're like a little over halfway, or maybe just about halfway. So I don't think they're done.
But we did meet a new character. We did meet Tom Pepper. His little story was very what is this? Sorry. His little story was very I'm sorry, I am being distracted by something over here.
Amazing. The fact
Yeah.
that his mother died after trying so hard to have a baby, and she had him, and then she died literally, what, 2 weeks after she had him?
I think it was week of, I thought.
Oh, so sad.
I know. But then that brings up, another, like, kind of the same concept of Nella, though. Like, the curse of magic.
Right.
You gotta, if you want something, you gotta give something.
Like the curse of meddling, because I mean, that's what Nella does with her potions and stuff. So it's like Tom's mom did the same thing just to save her child. And yeah, it's like everything costs something. Like there's a price to pay for everything. So yeah, you might get like what you want from something, but at what cost? So for Nella, it was her mom, like, and Frederick, and losing the good part of the apothecary, and for Tom, it was his mom. Like, she kept her child alive, but lost her own life.
Yeah. But their little storyline was very cute, though. On a lighter note. The cute little flirty stuff. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I definitely think that Eliza has a crush on Tom, for sure. She just doesn't know it yet.
I literally have in my notes, ooh, a crush, and I literally wrote it out that way.
Did you draw a little heart with Eliza and Tom's names?
No
Eliza
heart.
and Tom?
No, I'm so sorry. You're the artist of the group. That's not mine.
You're right. That should be my book cover design for this, right? Just a little heart with Eliza and Tom.
That's so funny.
I'm not gonna do that.
But yeah, that's so then. But in between, so I mean, do we have any? So before we get to our ending with Caroline, where do we think our 1791 storyline is going? What's going to happen next? What's going on with Eliza, Tom, maybe Tom again, and Nella? Is there going to be drama? We're getting to the end. We've only got 2 sections left of this book. Something's coming.
Yes, I believe there's going to be some kind of drama. Something that's going to bring them all back together somehow. There's got to be. That's the only way I can see this.
Right, because we learn about the party and what happens. And if Lady Clarence is slick or if something goes awry.
I'm going to say that I think, well, just based on where we're starting next time, chapter 20, we see that it's Nella's point of view. So I feel like we're definitely going to see how Nella's story plays out a little bit, because I think we're going to find out what happened at the party, because I think Nella's going to hear about it somehow. And then I feel like we're definitely going to hear more from Eliza and Tom. Like, that's not over. So I think in some way, some big thing is going to happen with all of them in the 1791 storyline.
Yeah. No, I think the party's party's gonna trigger something. What that something is, I'm not really too sure, but it's gonna be something bad for Nella, it seems, which is sad.
I am kind of curious though what you guys think. I mean, obviously, at some point, Nella and Eliza both have to die. Like they live in 1791, but do you think like? I mean, do you think we're gonna read about it? I mean, obviously we will. Like, do you think we'll find out how they both die?
I think just with how deep or how like foreshadowy we're getting with Nella just throughout the whole book, it seems. I think we'll find out how she dies, if it is, natural or forced in some way. I'm not sure if we're gonna get an Eliza death. I mean, it could be a thing where they both die in some weird little accident or
Do you think
something.
Eliza will live to adulthood?
Hmm.
I mean, for the times, I guess.
I don't know. It would have to be some freak accident or some freak thing. I think there's just too many people that care about Eliza to kill her off. What do you think?
Okay.
Do you think they're both going to die? Is that what you're
Yeah.
alluding to?
Yeah, I think they're both gonna die in some like tragic end.
That would suck. But appropriate for
I
them.
know it really would, but I'm scared and I'm nervous, especially like it's cute that Eliza and Tom meet, but I'm nervous that he might sell her out or something, or I don't trust his intentions because all the men who've been introduced in this story are not very good. So I don't trust Tom. It's cute, but I don't trust him. So I'm nervous that somehow is going to play into some big thing, and that'll be like whatever big drama or whatever exposes Nella and Eliza, and I think they're both
Hmm.
What about Book Club Mom and Decal? What do you guys think?
No, I don't see it. Well, Nella certainly is already beginning to die, right? Not only physically, where it's being written that she's, failing, even at 42 or whatever she is. And of course, she blames it on the fact that she's doing something evil and that, evil is happening within her, right? And so she's already sort of come to terms with her dying, right? But I think the relationship between Eliza and Nella is more, mentor and student. I think that Eliza is going to become the next apothecarist.
Okay. Do you think she'll make it like a good apothecary or keep it as a poison apothecary?
That I don't know. Because
Okay.
she's already been involved in poison, I think she might have to keep it poison because she's not innocent anymore.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point.
I don't know what I think. I think thing is like Nella, in reality, she's the most dangerous person in the town, and not a single person knows her. She's a very like a fly on the wall situation where she could walk into this party and nobody would even know who she is. Probably wouldn't even bother to ask her because if you're at one of those parties, I'm guessing nobody's gonna ask you who you are, right? It's kind of rude. So I feel like her and Eliza are gonna have to come back together because I think just with Nella being on her own, like I think if Eliza wasn't there in the beginning when the lady came to kill the mistress, she was already like, yeah, just take me or like I'd go, right? Or like I don't want anybody in my records, just you can, you know. So I think they're gonna have to come together again at some point. But yeah, I think Nella, excuse me, is just yikes. Nella. she, yeah, I think she doesn't have much life left in her, and she knows it, which is sad. And she also doesn't want to get Eliza into what she's been dealing with for however many years, even though that's what intrigues Eliza the most, right? So it's just like, it's not going to end very happy for either party, right? But I don't know what's going to happen. But at the same time, like all these people on the list who she's like, this person had to kill this person, Like, did any of them not work? Or did any of them didn't go as planned and they're still there? And is she going to run into any of those people still? That's what I keep thinking about.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Because, like, how can one of those names not still be alive or something didn't happen?
That's fair, but I feel like the woman would come back and be like, this didn't work.
Tom.
Any other guesses for Eliza or Nella? What's going to happen next? Or should we just get into our juicy bit with Caroline?
Let's go.
So, so Caroline, of course, after lunch decides to return to the quote unquote Bear Alley.
Mhm.
And yeah, so what do we think about that whole situation? Would you jump the fence after you saw the no trespassing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I
I
would definitely.
100% would.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Caroline intrigued, so she's got to follow her heart and try to figure out where this is leading. So good for her. She's finally taking initiative.
Yes.
I think this is
agree.
like the one time in her life where it's like she's not doing it for a we factor or an us factor where that other factor wasn't giving anything in return. So I think this for her is like she needs to do this for her own well-being at this point. So
Yeah, she's doing something for herself.
mhm.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I really like this chapter mainly because like if this was me in her shoes, I would just be like giddy the whole time. I'd be like, I'm finding more
Mhm.
things.
Also
And boy,
It's like an Indiana Jones-esque adventure, and as a kid, I wanted to be Indiana Jones, so I was loving it.
Oh, for sure.
I also am curious. I just thought it was kind of weird that the no trespassing sign was up because the way that it was written, it made it sound like it wasn't there before when she was there earlier in the day. So I'm wondering if that's just was written that way to so that we could read about like her contemplating whether or not to jump the wall. Like,
Mhm.
I'm wondering if that was just like a tidbit that was thrown in there to move along the plot, or I'm wondering if we're gonna hear more about the no trespassing sign, like
Mm.
if it was placed there because the plumber saw her in the alley and like maybe he's not a plumber. So I don't know. I don't know yet about that.
That's giving
another
me some very like
Act.
that's giving me some very like secret society vibes.
Yeah, like to protect the apothecary's like legacy of killing people. I don't know. I guess I'm getting really conspiracy theory into it.
They couldn't exist today because the forensics examiners there's too much science now. They can easily tell what happened. So they can, Nella wouldn't be in business today.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I probably am just reading a little too much into it. That's
Yeah.
fine.
End of the book is Eliza started a secret society in honor of Nella.
Right, right.
But no, I say that again. Sorry.
So that's where cults started.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. But I really appreciated the whole like, anticipation of her opening the door, and then she saw the remnants of the back alley, and then the door to the, well, most likely apothecary, but we don't technically know. That door was just, wide open for her to go in, and blah blah blah. And I was like, I wish.
Well, and two, just the way that the author wrote it. Like,
Right.
my phone battery was full. Now it's 55%. Now it's 30%. And it's like, as you're reading towards the end of the chapter, you're like, oh my God, her phone's going to die. Oh my God, her phone's going to die. So I think that also added to the suspense of it.
Oh, of course. And I loved how she took the bachelor elf uh, mudlarking to it of like, oh, look for inconsistencies. Like this is weird. This doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. And she also brings it back around to like the bedside confession, like it'd be a maze to men because a man's not going to notice, this tiny door that's obviously was made for Nella. So I think that was cool how they brought that back around.
So do we think she stumbled upon the um apothecary, or do we think she stumbled upon something else?
I think she stumbled upon the apothecary.
Yeah.
So since it's so like it seems like it's still hidden and no one's been there, is the
Right.
apothecary going to be preserved? Are we going to find something from 1791 that Nella has touched? Do we
We
think
hope.
like Eliza moved everything out if she lived to see
Fingers
the
crossed.
day, or do we think her phone's gonna die and we're not gonna be able to see what's in the room, or do we think we're gonna be able to see what's in there?
I'd be so mad if her phone dies.
Don't worry, she'll go back, charge her phone, and come back another day.
Yeah, but then we have,
Portable charger, Caroline.
This time.
yeah, but then
How
we
are you
gotta
gonna
wait.
find your
I
way
don't
out of
want to
that
wait.
place?
So what do we think she's gonna find if her phone doesn't die?
A vial, at the very least, that matches the vial that she found so that she can make the connection. That's what I think.
Any other guesses?
There was just gonna be like a page out of her book with names or something.
Mm.
Oh, that's a good point. Because if the document that Gaynor found is her ledger, and if Caroline finds a page of the ledger in the door she just opened, like in that room, then she can compare it.
Yeah.
Well, if
That's a good
we
point.
go along that thought process of like this room hasn't been touched potentially since 1791, do we think the ledger is still one of the manuscripts? Could the ledger be still in the apothecary?
I did not think about that. Because it would make sense, right? Like if the apothecary was untouched.
I feel like if Eliza's gonna live though, wouldn't she take all of that with her? Like, why would she just leave it?
But again, that's like a piece of history nobody knows about, but it's her secret now, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think Eliza lives. So I don't think the apothecary will be empty. I think it's all still gonna be there.
Thing is, I think if we're going off that, Nella does pass away. I think Eliza can, if she knows where it is, she knows how to use it, right? Like, knowledge is power, and power can be dangerous. She's just going to choose her moments to do so, right? So I feel like she still might use it here and there, as long as still nobody knows about it, right?
Yeah,
Right.
that's a good point too.
I'm very excited to see what happens next. We're getting to the juicy bits, and so it's just gonna be more and more. And I did. You are all going to be mad at me. I did accidentally read the chapter we're stopping at, the ending line, and it's a big one. So you're gonna all be mad at me.
The
But
next section that we're ending at,
yeah,
you read the last sentence of the next section.
well, we're 2 sections away, so I had to make sure that I'm ending on good points, so we keep stuff for our last section. So
Gasp.
yeah,
How dare you?
you're all gonna be mad.
What chapter are we ending on then?
So we are still reading The Lost Apothecary for everyone who's watching. If anyone's watching. So we're gonna read till chapter 27 or chapter 28. So you're gonna read chapter 27. You're not gonna read chapter 28. So it's gonna be around 60 pages, and then we've got. With that, of course, we've got only 2 sections left of this book. And so that is very exciting that we're going to be finishing our first book for the soon-to-be named book club. Yay! But we are picking our second book. So that whole process is each of us are going to nominate a lovely little book that we want to read, and then you can all vote on which book you think. The link for the Google poll is in our link tree, which you can find on our Instagram, and I can easily put our link tree at the bottom of this. Well, eventually will be YouTube video. But I welcome everyone to vote on our next book and have their own input so we can all read what we all want to read. So I guess I will start off. My choice for this one, let me get my little doodad up that I want to read to everyone. So I picked The Southern's Book Club Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Why is he texting me? Patricia Campbell had always planned for a big life, but after giving up her career as a nurse to become a mother, Patricia's life has never felt smaller. The one thing she has to look forward to is her book club. A group of Charleston mothers united only by their love for true crime and suspenseful fiction. In these meetings, they're more likely to discuss the FBI's recent siege of Waco as much as the ups and downs of marriage and motherhood. But when an artistic and sensitive stranger moves into the neighborhood, the book club's meetings turn into speculation about the newcomer. Patricia is initially attracted to him, but when some local children go missing, she starts to suspect the newcomer is involved. She begins her own investigation, and what she uncovers is far more terrifying, and soon she and her book club are the only people standing between the monster they've invited into their homes and their unsuspecting community. So I would like to. So this is my nomination for this book round.
Is that a bleeding peach on the front?
It is.
That's cute.
It is. So I think it's appropriate for us since we are a book club, and then we can figure out what other shenanigans we can get into. But I don't know whoever wants to go next with their.
So pick me.
All right.
My book is The It Girl by Ruth Ware. April was the first person Hannah met at Oxford. Vivacious, bright, occasionally vicious, and the ultimate it girl. She quickly pulled Hannah into her dazzling orbit. Together, they developed a group of devoted and inseparable friends during their first term. By the end of the second term, April was dead. Now, a decade later, Hannah is expecting her first child, and the man convicted of killing April has died in prison. Relieved to have finally put the past behind her, Hannah's world is rocked when a young journalist comes knocking and presents new evidence that Neville may have been innocent. As Hannah reconnects with old friends and delves deeper into the mystery of April's death, She realizes that the friends she thought she knew all have something to hide, including a murder. So pick The It Girl by Ruth Ware.
Like,
Damn, those are both good options.
Who would like to show their nominate their next book?
I can go next. So my nomination, the one that's gonna win, is
Ooh.
damn, no, I'm kidding.
Awfully confident.
So, The Last Thing He Told Me by Lord Dave. The main character's also name is Hannah, so do not get confused with the It Girl.
Girl.
What's the name again, Decal?
The Last Thing He Told Me.
The Last Thing He Told Me.
Here's a little synopsis.
Okay.
Before Owen Michaels disappears, he manages to smuggle a note to his beloved wife of 1 year. Protect her. Despite her confusion and fear, Hannah Hall knows exactly to whom the note refers. Owen's 16-year-old daughter, Bailey. Bailey, who lost her mother tragically as a child. Bailey, who wants nothing to do with her new stepmom. As Hannah's increasingly desperate calls to Owen go unanswered, as the FBI arrest Owen's boss, as the U.S. Marshal and FBI agents arrive at her home unannounced, she quickly realizes her husband isn't who he said he was, and that Bailey just may hold the key to figuring out Owen's true identity and why he really disappeared. Hannah and Bailey set out to discover the truth together. The end.
Ooh.
All
That's
good.
called The Last Thing He Told Me by Lord Dave.
Mm.
So, we obviously all are in a very true crimey mood because I feel like all three of your books are some type of mystery or crime,
That
and
is
mine
true.
also is as well. So, my nomination, my book choice is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. And the little synopsis. Okay. For years, rumors of the Marsh Girl haunted Barkley Cove, a quiet fishing village. Kaya Clark is barefoot and wild, unfit for polite society. So in late 1969, when the popular Chase Andrews is found dead, locals immediately suspect her. But Kaya is not what they say. A born naturalist with just 1 day of school, she takes life's lessons from the land, learning the real ways of the world from the dishonest signals of fireflies. But while she has the skills to live in solitude forever, the time comes when she yearns to be touched and loved. Drawn to 2 young men from town who are each intrigued by her wild beauty, Kaya opens herself to a new and startling world until the unthinkable happens.
Yes.
And that is my nomination, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. So vote for mine.
And like I said, all 4 of those options will be on the Google Doc, or well, the link. Well, you can find all of those 4 nominations in the link tree in the Google Doc that is labeled book choice number 2 or whatever I labeled it today. Right at the top, you can't miss it. Of course, vote for this other book club's guide to slaying vampires. It's gonna be the best book.
Vote for the
But no judgment if you vote for something else. You know, it's whatever.
If only we were all physically together in the same place, we could duke it out in the ring.
Of course, yes.
Exactly.
So that voting will go on for about a week, maybe ish. I'm not too set on that, but because we still do have 2 sections of this book to go, so that does give us all enough time to buy the book and be ready for it in 3 weeks' time for our first meeting for that second book we all get to vote for. Thank you, of course, everyone, for watching us today, and anyone who watches later. We appreciate it all. I will, as usual, love to thank Book Club Mom for being here. Love to thank Decal for being here. And also, of course, oops, would love to thank our illustrations for being here, but you can call her Soap. Of course, you can find all the other three of us on our Discord. And where else can they find you, Soap?
My Instagram, it's Heart Illustration 7.
Perfect. And then, as always, I would love to thank our producer slash engineer, Botsy, and you can always find him at Botsy Studio. He streams sometimes among other things he does with his socials. So thank you all for joining, and I can't wait to see you next week to read our next section of The Lost Apothecary. Have a great night, everyone.